All right, here we are on row 15 of the miter corner of Daggett shawl. You can see that I have worked my short rows about halfway around that corner. And now we're going to do our boomerang row, which is where we work all the way down and all the way back. So this is your first time picking up a wrap in your brioche short rows. So first we're going to look at how to pick up a wrap. Now I'm not doing any shaping on mine because I'm just using this as an example. So I'm going to show you how to work some wraps. Then we're going to look at how to do a increase into a wrap, and then we're going to look at how to do a bobble into a wrap. So this is not actually me working in pattern, but it is showing the techniques. So with my main color, I knit that first stitch and then slip. Now I've come to my first wrapped stitch, and you can see that there is a little horizontal band right there, which is our wrap. And then we've got our stitch and we've got its yarn over. We want to work all three of those together. So I'm going to slip my needle into the wrap. I'm going to slip it into the stitch and its yarn over, and I'm going to bark all three of those together. Okay. We slip, grab the wrap, and bark. Slip, grab the wrap, and bark. Really, really simple. Now, what does it look like if we are doing shaping elements? So I'm going to slip this next stitch. Let's do an increase first because it's faster. I'm going to do exactly the same thing I did before. I'm picking up the wrap, I'm picking up the stitch and its yarn over, and I'm going to bark, yo, bark into all three of those strands, and then pull that stitch off the needle. There's my increase. Slip the next one, and let's look at a bobble. It's exactly the same. I'm going to slip my needle into that first stitch, and I'm going to work a bark into that stitch. It gets a little fiddly with the wrap, but there we go. So there is my increase. Now I would just turn this work, and I'm going to work the bobble as usual with some purls across. Turn. Do some knits across. I know you don't really need to watch me do a bobble, but I'm doing it in solidarity. I've made you do hundreds of bobbles in this shawl, so I might as well do one with you. And turn. Purl two together. This part's always a little finicky. There we go. Purl two together. Oops. Try again. There we go. Purl one. And purl two together. Turn. Last step. Then we slip two. Knit one, pass those stitches over, shape this little guy nice and plump, and go ahead and continue working in pattern. We're going to pick up that wrap and bark all three of those together, pulling snug on our bobble just as usual. All we're doing in this section is stacking multiple techniques together. There's nothing really new or fancy. Pick up this wrap. Slip. And now I'm at that last column stitch, and this is where I'm going to wrap that stitch. So I make sure this one gets its yarn over, slip, yarn back, and then I'm going to slip these stitches all the way back to the left needle to start again with my contrast color. Be careful around your bobble, of course. That is the stitch, and there's the bobble. Be careful with your increases. These all get a little bit tricky. There we go. And slip, 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 slip. And these last two stitches always look a little weird. There we go. And pick up your contrast color. My hands are so dry from all the hand washing lately. Slip, burp, slip. This row, excuse me, this row looks just like normal. Burp, we're gonna slip, purl, because that is into an increase, slip. Now I've got my bobble, so I'm gonna go ahead and do an increase here. I'll do a right one. Honestly, in this whole section, you can pick and choose which way your increases or your decreases go. It looks beautiful no matter how that goes. There we go. I always like to snug up on that decrease also before I move on. Slip, burp, and we are going to slip and burp our way all the way over to that wrapped stitch, which we can recognize because it's got that little horizontal leg on it. Burp is my last stitch, and it always looks funny right there before we turn. And that is it. I'm gonna work my way back across these rows. These are rest rows as usual. And then when you get to this section, you're doing exactly the same as you did on this part. So many papers. Exactly the same as you did on this part, but instead of going all the way across the row and back, you're going to be just doing one stitch and picking up wraps. So let's look at that. Let me get my way back across the work. We're gonna slip and make sure that gets a yarn over. Burp, wrap, burp, wrap, burp, wrap, burp. And purl the last stitch. I'm going to slip all of these. I'm actually going to turn this to slip them. It's a little bit easier for me to slip this direction. I just have to remember which way I was going. And I'm slipping all the way back to this guy, which is the stitch that the first slip yarn over stitch that I did. Turn my work again because this is the direction I was going, and we're going to work as usual. So I'm going to bark this first stitch with its funky wrap, and look, you can see again this wrap always looks really weird on that first stitch, but you're going to treat it like usual. And we are barking and sloughing our way across. And slip the last stitch with yarn in back. All right, so that is our boomerang row there. It looks wonky, that's okay. It always looks wonky until you get it all finished and blocked out. All right, so now starting on section D3, we just did rows 15 and 16. Row 17 starts with very, very short rows. We're going to knit that first stitch as usual, slip the next one, make sure it gets its yarn over, and then we're going to wrap this next stitch. These are the ones that are really fun. We're going to slip all those stitches, all three of them, back to the left needle to work our contrast row. Slip with yarn in front, burp. This next stitch is my wrapped stitch, so I'm going to go ahead and turn. Main color is in front, contrast color is in back. And just like we did before, always make sure that the first one gets its yarn over, and then purl that last stitch. I'm going to slip this one and this one with its wrap back. Now all these stitches are a little bit loose in this section because we're very, very close to the end. So I'm just going to snug up on my yarn a little bit. This is my stitch with its wrap. Bark those together and slip that last stitch with yarn in back. Turn. These go so fast. It's so great. Oops. get my yarn situated. Main color is in back, contrast color is in front. Now we're going to start working rows where you are working a wrap and wrapping a stitch on the same row. So we knit this first stitch, slip. Now I've got a wrapped stitch there that has its little horizontal leg. So I'm going to wrap it as usual, pick up the leg of the wrap, pick up the stitch and its yarn over, and bark all 3 of those strands together. I'm going to work one more slip, and then I'm going to make sure that gets its yarn over and wrap the next stitch. Slide all these back to the left needle, pick up my contrast color, slip with yarn in front, burp, slip, and burp all the way up to that wrapped stitch, but not including it, turn. And that is how this section goes. My contrast color is in back, my main color is in front, and I always make sure to wrap that first one, then I burp and slip my way to that last stitch, drop the yarn, slip these stitches back. Oh, those first 3 stitches always want to come together for me. There we go. Back to this funky one, which is our wrapped stitch plus the one next to it with the yarn over. I'm pulling that yarn over, and we are barking as usual. Slip the last one with yarn in back, turn. And that's that. And you can see, you can't really see. That's the bobble I just made. Yeah, you can see it a little bit where we're starting to get a little bit of that right angle right along this edge here. But this section is going to be worked boop, 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 and you're getting it longer and longer. And these stitches are going to be pointing this direction now, because then you're going to work up this right edge, which I will show you in the next video. See you there.